Imagine this: one man's voice, amplified by simple cassette tape smuggled across borders, brings a 2,500-year-old monarchy crashing down. He wasn't a general, not a typical politician, but a cleric living in exile. Yet his words sparked a revolution that didn't just redraw Iran's map, it sent shockwaves across the entire globe, waves we still feel today. This is the incredible story of Ayatollah Ruhollah. To millions, he was a revered spiritual guide, a robber or supreme leader whose every decision seemed divinely inspired. To others, he was the architect of a harsh, repressive theocracy. But here's what's undeniable: Ayatollah Khomeini's leadership and his unwavering vision completely changed Iran's path and carved out a new, often stormy, chapter for the Middle East. How did one man manage such a massive transformation? And what kind of legacy did he leave behind? Ruhollah Mousavi, who later became known as Khomeini after his hometown of Khomein, was born around 1902 into a family of Shia religious scholars. Life hit him hard early on. His father was killed when he was just 5 months old. He was raised by his mother and aunt, but they too passed away while he was still a teenager. Maybe these early losses forged a certain steel in him. He dove deep into Islamic studies, first in his local area, then in Iraq, and finally, around 1922, in Qom, which was pretty much the intellectual heart of Shia scholarship in Iran. There, he quickly made a name for himself as a scholar and teacher, known for his writings on Islamic philosophy, law, and ethics. Now, Iran at this time was under the Pahlavi dynasty. The Shah, Mohammad Reza Pahlavi, who took power in 1941, was really pushing Iran towards Western ways and secularism. His White Revolution in the early 1960s aimed to modernize the country with things like land reforms, giving women the right to vote, and cutting back on religious education. Some saw this as progress, sure, but these reforms also rubbed a lot of people the wrong way, especially the powerful clergy who felt their influence and traditional values were slipping away. It also led to cities growing too fast, economic problems for folks in the countryside, and more people worrying about democracy and human rights. Khomeini was one of the first and loudest religious leaders to slam the Shah's reforms and the growing Western influence. He saw these changes as a full-blown attack on Islam and Iranian identity. His fiery sermons, where he called the Shah a tyrant and a puppet of the West, really struck a chord with a growing number of Iranians who felt left out and angry. He wasn't just criticizing, he was calling for an Islamic state, which was a pretty radical idea back then. A moment that really catapulted Khomeini to the front of the opposition came in 1963, after he famously called the Shah a wretched, miserable man hell-bent on destroying Islam in Iran. He was arrested. His arrest lit a fire, sparking 3 days of major riots across Iran. The Shah's security forces cracked down hard. After a year in prison, Khomeini was forced out of Iran on November 4, 1964. This exile was supposed to silence him, but ironically, it just made his voice louder and turned him into a powerful symbol of resistance. Khomeini eventually ended up in Najaf, Iraq, a major holy city for Shia Muslims. It was here, in exile, that he fully fleshed out and spread his theory of Velayat-e-Faqih, or guardianship of the jurist. And this idea, it argued that if the hidden imam wasn't around, then the most qualified Islamic legal scholars should run the state, making sure all laws and policies lined up with Islamic principles. This concept would become the very foundation of the Islamic Republic he aimed to build. From Najaf, and later from just outside Paris, Khomeini's messages found their way back to Iran. Think about this: his sermons, lectures, and declarations were recorded on cassette tapes and smuggled into the country by a huge network of supporters. These tapes, passed from hand to hand, mosque to mosque, spread his message of defiance and his vision for an Islamic government to millions. He built an enormous following, bringing together all sorts of groups: religious conservatives, students, merchants, and even secular intellectuals. Basically, anyone fed up with the Shah's iron-fisted rule, his regime's corruption, how it seemed to bow down to Western powers, and the glaring gap between rich and poor. By the late 1970s, Iran was a powder keg ready to blow. Economic problems, the Shah's ongoing repression, and his regime's flashy displays of wealth just fueled the fire of widespread anger. Mass protests, strikes, and civil unrest started to paralyze the country from 1977 onward. Events like the tragic cinema Rex fire in Abadan in August 1978, which many blamed on the Shah's security forces, and the Black Friday massacre of protesters in Tehran in September 1978, only made people angrier and more determined. Throughout 1978, the demonstrations just got bigger and more intense, with millions flooding the streets, demanding the Shah leave. The Shah's regime, even with its powerful military and the notorious secret police, Savak found itself more and more alone. On January 16, 1979, Mohammad Reza Pahlavi and his family fled Iran, officially saying they were going on vacation. The departure of the Shah, Iran's last king, marked the end of thousands of years of monarchy. Then, on February 1, 1979, Ayatollah Khomeini returned to Iran like a conquering hero. Millions lined the streets of Tehran to greet him, cheering him as the leader of the revolution. Within days, what was left of the Shah's government just crumbled, and the army declared it wouldn't take sides. The revolution had won. The next big job was to actually build this Islamic Republic. A national vote in April 1979 showed overwhelming support for this new kind of government. A new constitution, which wrote the principle of Vilayat-e Faqih into law, was approved in December. It named Khomeini as Rabba, the supreme political and religious leader of Iran, for life. Khomeini didn't waste any time. He moved quickly to consolidate his power and reshape Iran according to his vision. This meant setting up new revolutionary bodies, like the Revolutionary Council and the Revolutionary Guards. It also meant a brutal payback for those linked to the old regime. Hundreds were executed. Opposition groups, including leftists, liberals, and ethnic minorities, who'd initially backed the revolution but didn't share. Khomeini's dream of a theocracy was systematically crushed, and Iranian society, it changed dramatically. Islamic law, Sharia, became the law of the land. Women were forced to wear veils, Western music and alcohol were banned, and Islamic punishments were brought back. Education and the media were Islamized, with textbooks rewritten to push religious values and anti-Western views. Khomeini famously declared, "Don't listen to those who speak of democracy. They all are against Islam. We will break all the poison pens of those who speak of nationalism, democracy, and such things." His authority was absolute, often steamrolling right over laws and what the people might have wanted. Two huge events really defined these early years of Khomeini's rule and shaped Iran's relationship with the world. First, the Iran hostage crisis. On November 4, 1979, the 15th anniversary of Khomeini's exile, radical students stormed the U.S. Embassy in Tehran. They took 52 American diplomats and citizens hostage for 444 agonizing days. With Khomeini's clear approval, the hostage takers demanded the Shah be sent back to Iran to face trial. This act pretty much cemented the image of the United States as the great Satan in Iran's revolutionary talk, and caused a deep, lasting break in relations. Second, the Iran-Iraq War. In September 1980, Saddam Hussein's Iraq invaded Iran. Saddam was worried Khomeini's revolution might spread to Iraq's own Shia majority, and he also hoped to grab some oil-rich Iranian land. Khomeini rallied the nation, painting the war as a defense of Islam itself. He refused any peaceful solution and pushed to keep the war going, hoping to topple Saddam. The war dragged on for 8 brutal years, costing hundreds of thousands of lives on both sides and wrecking both economies. It wasn't until 1988 that Khomeini reluctantly accepted a UN-brokered ceasefire. The war, despite its horrific cost, actually helped the revolutionary regime tighten its grip on power and allowed Khomeini to squash any internal dissent by saying it was all for national unity. Ayatollah Khomeini died on June 3, 1989, after a series of heart attacks. His death threw Iran into deep mourning, and millions attended his funeral. He was succeeded as supreme leader by Ali Khamenei, who had been president. It was a tense, uncertain moment, but the system Khomeini had built, it helped. The Iran Khomeini left behind was a world away from the nation he'd set out to transform. He'd torn down a pro-Western, secular monarchy and replaced it with something unique, an Islamic Republic, a theocracy run by clerics, all based on his interpretation of Shia Islam. This system, with the supreme leader at the very top, holding ultimate power over every part of the government, the military, and the courts, still defines Iran's political landscape today. Inside Iran, people are still deeply divided about him. His supporters see him as a revolutionary hero who freed Iran from foreign control and Western corruption. They believe he established a truly Islamic state and promoted social justice based on religious principles. They point to his strong stand against what he saw as oppressors and his commitment to Islamic values. His gold-domed tomb in Tehran even became a shrine. His critics, though, tell a different story. They highlight the widespread human rights abuses under his rule, the execution of thousands of political prisoners, the crushing of any opposition, severe limits on personal freedoms, and the persecution of minorities. They argue that his rigid ideology choked off progress and isolated Iran from the rest of the world. And this revolution wasn't just about Iran. Its ripples spread far and wide. Khomeini actively tried to export his Islamic Revolution, calling on Muslims everywhere to overthrow regimes he considered corrupt, and this directly challenged the way things were in the Middle East, especially for secular Arab states and monarchies allied with the West. Iran became a fierce opponent of Israel, cutting all ties and starting the annual Quds Day to show solidarity with Palestinians. It also backed Shia movements and militant groups in places like Lebanon, Iraq, and Bahrain, fueling sectarian tensions and proxy wars that are still shaping the region's politics. The revolutionary slogan, "Neither East nor West, Islamic Republic," perfectly captured his foreign policy goal: complete independence from both superpowers. Khomeini's vision of an Islamic state governed by Sharia law and led by clerics inspired Islamist movements all over the Muslim world, both Sunni and Shia. It offered a powerful alternative to secular nationalism and Western-style governments. In the West, he pretty much became the face of Shia Islam for many, often linked with radicalism and anti-Western feelings. What about the economy? Khomeini's era saw a shift towards policies that stressed self-sufficiency and resisting Western economic influence, including taking over key industries. While the goal was economic independence, these policies, along with war and international sanctions, have led to ongoing economic headaches for Iran. Ayatollah Khomeini was, without a doubt, one of the most transformative figures of the 20th century. His charisma, his deeply held beliefs, and his unbending will didn't just reshape a nation. They sent tremors right across the international stage. He dismantled an ancient monarchy and, in its place, built a brand new kind of state, an Islamic Republic based on his doctrine of velayat faqih. Whether you see him as a spiritual liberator or an authoritarian ideologue, his actions changed Iran's destiny forever. His legacy continues to be a powerful force, shaping Iran's internal struggles, its complicated relationship with the West, and its influential, often disruptive, role in the Middle East. The ripples of the revolution he led are still spreading, decades after his death, a real testament to the profound and lasting impact of the man who changed Iran's destiny. So, what do you think about Ayatollah Khomeini's incredibly complex legacy? Did his revolution ultimately help or harm Iran in the Middle East? We'd love to hear your thoughts. Share your perspectives in the comments below. And if you found this look into such a pivotal historical figure insightful, please give this video a like, subscribe to our channel, and don't forget to hit that notification bell for more deep dives into the people who truly shaped our world.